Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns and gunfighting the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I am humbled and blessed to serve you today as host. I'll forego the lengthy bio other than to say I am a servant of God and have been blessed to be a professional gunfighter for most of my adult life. Military, law enforcement, private contractor, competition shooter, big game hunter, and guide. With that, let's get into today's episode, Hidden Gems in the Rifle World. Now, Mauser is a known name in the industry. It's a legendary name. It's one of the greats. But mostly when you think of Mauser, you think of the Mauser 98, which is a phenomenal rifle, but doesn't really fit what we're talking about here today as a hidden gem. Did you know Mauser still makes rifles? They still make the Mauser 98, it's a good rifle. They also make what we're going to talk about here in this episode, the Mauser 18, kind of a hidden gem. Not a lot of people, I think, when they're considering their next hunting rifle, do they consider a Mauser 18? They might consider, a Remington 700 or a Winchester Model 70 or a Tikka. But where's the love for the Mauser 18? If you want kind of that German name, that German heritage that Mauser brings to the table, if you want something a little bit different, that Mauser 18 is a really cool option. It's especially cool if you want it in some, let's say, less popular here in America calibers, right? Because we're not the only ones that come up with good calibers. Long before there was the 6.5 Creedmoor, there was a round that I really, really like, the 6.5 by 55 Swede. And if you look at modern loadings in that, not like the classic loadings from the 1800s, and yes, it was around in the 1800s, what you can load that to with modern bullets and modern pressures and modern rifles, I'm just going to go ahead and say it, for most practical hunting purposes at reasonable ranges, it's better than a 6.5 Creedmoor. Nothing wrong with the 6.5 Creedmoor. I like 6.5 Creedmoor. I have hunted quite a bit with a 6.5 Creedmoor. It took me a long time to warm up to it, but for everything that offers, the 6.5 by 55 Swede is a great legendary cartridge. And again, if you just want one of the other cartridges that are popular in other places, not just here in America, let me list some of these cartridges that they have on their website. The 6.5 by 55 Swede, the 7 by 57, just awesome. I've done a whole podcast on just that cartridge. What a good, well-balanced cartridge. The 8 by 57, the 9 by 62. The 9 by 62 is like the big bore German African hunting cartridge. So if you're looking for a big bore rifle, you might consider that M18. It's also offered in some more traditional loadings like 223, 243, 270, 6.5 PRC, 6.5 Creedmoor, 30-06, 300 Win Mag, 7mm Rem Mag. So it's got the classics too. But if you want some of that European flair on a good name in rifles, that Mauser 18, I think it certainly fits the bill as a hidden gem. One really cool feature of this rifle before I move off of it is that it has a kind of hidden compartment in the buttstock, which is something I like to do on my rifles, but a lot of times I have to make those. The Mauser comes with that, with two little tabs that you push in, and you can hold, let's say, a bore snake in there, or whatever other tools you want to hold in there. I'm a big fan of having one spare round of ammunition in there, just in case. But that Mauser 18 comes like that, with that compartment. That's pretty cool to see that in a factory rifle. The next one I'm going to talk about, also European, also maybe not thought of so much, but if you're looking for a really nice, high-end, elegant, accurate, good, weather-resistant hunting rifle, the Benelli Lupo. The Benelli Lupo. I really strongly considered this for the Alaska rifle. As you know, by God's grace, hopefully my wife and I soon will be going to Alaska. It was in the running. It was up in the top And what really knocked it out was it's not controlled round feed, and I like controlled round feed. Most modern rifles are not, and this one is not. But if you don't care about the controlled round feed and you just want those qualities I talked about, elegance, accuracy, really good weather resistance, the Benelli Lupo, you often think of Benelli shotguns, especially for like high-end, really hard-use shotguns. Benelli M4 is legendary for a combat shotgun. The Benelli M2s, Super Black Eagle, those are kind of legendary in the hunting world for good reason. They're awesome, they're robust, they're very, very forgiving of neglect and the elements and salt water and mud and all those things. Well, they take a lot of that technology and put it in the Benelli Lupo in a hunting rifle. And by the accounts that I've heard, it is crazy accurate. It's a phenomenally accurate gun, and there's a lot of accurate guns now out on the market. Heck, there are some budget rifles that are crazy accurate, like a Tikka. However, there's more to a rifle than just accuracy. There's the way that it points, the way that it fits. Unlike a lot of rifles, you can adjust the stock on this one from the factory, like a Benelli shotgun, which I really like and appreciate. If you know how a shotgun or a rifle is supposed to fit you, and come to the shoulder like it's jumping into your shoulder, like it wants to be there, instead of some awkward thing that's just mass-produced that may not fit you. If you want kind of that custom fit and that elegance, but still on a rugged system, that Benelli Lupo offers that. I think it's a phenomenal, phenomenal choice. It's got some of those same finishes that make it so weather-resistant in the shotguns. It's kind of unconventional looking. I think it looks pretty cool. It's not what I would call traditional, but it's a handsome looking rifle to me. You may think it's hideous. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But the Benelli Lupo, I don't think, gets the market share that it probably should for the quality that you get and the features that it brings to the table. Just being able to adjust the stock to fit you. I mean, how many other rifles do that out of the box? A lot of times you have to go get custom fit unless you know your measurements. I pretty much know my length of pull and what I want and whether I want cast or drop and how much. But a lot of people don't know that. And if you don't know that, this gives you the ability to mess around with that and see what works well for you. Again, to make that rifle feel like it wants to jump into your shoulder, like it wants to be there, like that's where its home is, instead of just something you're trying to make work. And that's really cool they include that in the stock. And again, by all accounts, it's very accurate. Comes with a threaded barrel, comes with very common chamberings. I was looking at one in 30-06. They also make it in the 6.5 Creedmoor, 308, 270. And it's, I think, really a hidden gem in the rifle world. Another hidden gem, Savage. Savage makes a lot of good rifles. They make a lot of really accurate rifles. In fact, I have never had or seen anybody have a Savage where I was not impressed with the accuracy. Not even just for the money. Like, just period. They're accurate rifles. Now, you might be familiar with the Scout rifle concept. And if you are, you're probably likely most familiar with the Steyr Scout rifle and the Ruger Scout rifle. For good reason. They're both good rifles. You may be less familiar that Savage makes a Scout rifle. And if it's like any other Savage rifle that I've ever encountered, I would put it up against those other two for accuracy any day. Doesn't have some of the cool features of the Steyr. I don't think it comes in stainless steel like the Ruger, which I really like. However, again, for accuracy and being built on a proven platform or proven action, that Savage Scout rifle. But that's not even the one I don't even know how I got off on that tangent. A very similar rifle to a practical rifleman's rifle for hunting and survival at practical ranges with good backup iron sights, which I really like and appreciate. There is another. The Savage Hog Hunter. Whether or not you hunt hogs, it's just the name of the rifle. You can hunt anything else with it. It can be a good truck gun. It could be a good survival gun. It could be whatever. It's just got a lot of good features. Because I think even a lot of the Scout rifle sommeliers, whatever they would call themselves, and I'm not putting that down, it's a very intriguing concept. I think a lot of them would admit that nowadays it makes a lot of sense to put an LPVO on those kind of Scout rifles. So the whole forward mounted optic thing, I'm not saying there's never a place for it, but I'm saying even a lot of people that run scout rifles, I think, like an LPVO. So if that's the case, you don't need that dedicated forward rail that kind of define a lot of scout rifles. That's not the only feature, but that's a big one. That's kind of one of the ones when you see a rifle, especially a bolt action with a forward mounted scope, you think scout rifle. But if you're thinking a practical rifle at practical ranges, you might look at that Savage Hog Hunter. There's so much push in the rifle and the hunting world for these super long range precision rifles. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine, but not every rifle needs to be that. Not every hunting situation or many other survival and defensive situations are that, right? Or are 1,000-yard, 800-yard encounters. A good, handy, practical rifle, good at reasonable ranges, I would say out to 350 yards. And I think there's a lot more of those kind of scenarios than is being represented in the new rifle world today. There's so many new long-range variants in this thing and that thing coming out, which is fine. If you want to do that, rock on. But you want a good, robust bolt-action truck gun or a saddle gun with good backup iron sights, again, which I appreciate that. I like shooting with iron sights, and I like having them as a backup because I break things. Let's be real, I break things. I got a Smith & Wesson M&P right now, and I love Smith & Wesson M&P. I've won more competitions with them than anything else. I've got one sitting in my bag right now with a cracked frame. Who knows how many thousands of rounds that thing has through it. This will be, I think, its second, maybe third trip back to Smith & Wesson. I break stuff. I'm hard on stuff. If it's going to be a hard-use survival defensive rifle or just survival rifle for putting meat on the table, and if I don't get something, I don't just go back. If I'm counting on it, I like backup iron sights. The Hog Hunter offers that. It offers a lot of really good features. Again, a proven action. If it's like any other Savage, really accurate. If you wanted kind of that lighter weight option, lighter weight of ammo option, the ability to carry lots of ammo, lighter recoil, they do offer it in 223. Depending on where you live, that might be a good choice or your situation. They also offer it in one of the best all-around calibers, crossover for defense and hunting, the .308 Winchester. They also offer it in 350 Legend if you want this and you're actually restricted to straight-walled cartridges and you want the 350 Legend, they offer it in that. But the Hog Hunter, I think it's an overlooked hidden gem. The ones I've seen, they may come in different colors, but the ones I've seen have a quite handsome OD green stock, which is one of my favorite colors. A really cool offering from Savage. A 20-inch barrel, which I think is really good for this kind of setup for what it's designed for. It lists some pretty noteworthy, to me, features. Adjustable length of pull, user adjustable AccuTrigger, detachable box magazine, threaded barrel, adjustable iron sights, rugged olive drab synthetic stock, 20-inch medium contour barrel, which is about just great for this size and what you want. An oversized bolt handle. Not as modular as the Benelli Lupo as far as the adjustments on the stock go, but it's a lot more than a lot of rifles that just come with your standard stock. Especially if you know that you want a different length of pull. If you shoot in a more modern squared off stance with a rifle, it's really handy to be able to adjust that length of pull. And it's a good thing they included it on that. It's a cool feature. This rifle is just kind of packed with cool features, and I don't think a lot of people know about it. I mean, it's called the Hog Hunter, but it would be great for all kinds of things. Just a kind of practical all-around rifle. It'd be great for that. Next, hidden gems. Hidden gems in the rifle world. How about we go to America's rifle? America's favorite rifle, at least. I would make an argument that America's rifle is perhaps the Winchester Model 70, but maybe not. There's no argument that the AR-15 is the most popular rifle. If you consider that all one model, like if you consider the AR-15 a model, it's by far the most popular, I think. What about hidden gems there? Well, the one, it's so hidden that I even forgot about it. One of the listeners reached out to me and said, hey, what about B.C.M? And yeah, B.C.M. makes a good gun, and I often don't even consider them or think about them. In my time around, I have taught many military, law enforcement, civilian, rifle, handgun, and I have been around, and I've never seen any issues with B.C.M. B.C.M. makes a good gun, and I don't think they have the, let's say, panache, the Gucci factor that Daniel Defense does. And Daniel Defense makes a good gun, but I would not call them a hidden gem. They may not have the brand recognition of a Colt, like a Colt 6920. They're definitely not, I don't think, selling them in the numbers that Palmetto State Armory is selling their guns. But B.C.M. is a good manufacturer of ARs and AR parts, AR uppers. B.C.M., you might see it as Bravo Company, but yeah, they make really good quality stuff. I see them offering versions of like their version of an M4. I do believe Colt owns an M4, but a lot of companies make like an M4-ish thing. They offer those, M16. They offer what they call a recce. And that's not it, but that probably is the broad spectrum. And they, again, uppers. One of the great things about the AR-15, and one of the reasons I think it is so popular, is that you can buy the serialized part, which is basically just a block of aluminum. And you can put all the other stuff on it. And as long as you got that block, that lower receiver that's serialized, you can order everything else through the mail. Unless you live like a nomad like me, have it delivered to your house. And plug and play. If you're going to do that, I would advise you to get a complete upper, or at least complete as in the upper receiver and the barrel nut are already joined together, and preferably with a bolt that matches, because you can get into some stacking tolerance issues. And also it's kind of important how you join that bolt, the barrel, and that barrel nut to the upper receiver. I'm not saying you can't do it at a kitchen table and get away with it. I'm not saying that. I've never kind of just put one together, but if my advice to you would be get an upper with at least those components together. Like, that already has a bolt assembly and that already has the barrel and the barrel nut joined to the upper receiver. Because that's really where you can run into issues. Not the only place. I mean, you can put in a lower parts kit wrong and get some issues, but like catastrophic safety issues, order the complete upper, or I mean complete. It doesn't have to have like the coolest handrail or whatever. But complete as in that barrel and the barrel nut are joined to the upper receiver. I'd encourage you to go that way. And then piecing all the other stuff together, right? It's not that hard to put on a stock, or except for little tiny parts going flying across the room, it's not that hard to put together a lower receiver. Really not the massive pressure containing areas like the chamber is. So anyway, they offer the uppers. They offer the complete rifles, but B.C.M., I think, yeah, they are kind of a hidden gem. I don't know that I've ever talked about them on the podcast, and a thank you to the listener. He didn't say that he wanted his name mentioned, but he probably knows who he is if he's listening. And for all the other B.C.M. fans out there, yeah, they make good products. They make good stuff. There are just so many AR-15 companies out there. I kind of forget about them. They're not a bad company, which is great, so I don't generally talk about them in a bad way. Right, they're not the Springfield XD of the handgun world. They're also not one of my go-tos. When somebody asks me for a go-to recommendation, if they say, I want one for it's going to be my one AR, I'll probably recommend a Colt 6920, if you can find an older Colt LE 6920. Perhaps an FN, but usually I'll start with Colt. If you want a good one for the money, like best value, in my opinion, it's going to be the Smith & Wesson M&P. And those are generally my go-to recommendations. And if you want something else, then you probably know what you want. You're probably not asking me just for recommendations, so I don't often mention them. But yeah, the B.C.M., I think a hidden gem in the AR world. Also another one, Aero Precision. I think Aero Precision makes some really good stuff. Again, there's so many, they're not the only game in town, but they make good quality stuff. Aero Precision. Good barrels. Faxon makes good barrels, and there's a lot of companies that make good barrels. And here's a little secret: there's a lot of AR manufacturers that kind of assemble their own ARs, but a lot of the barrels are made by way less manufacturers. Like, a lot of manufacturers make barrels for all kinds of companies. They'll piece them together and put their name on them. But Faxon, I do believe, makes their own barrels, and they make good barrels, and they're not crazy expensive. If you want like the best value in a barrel, I'd probably say look at Faxon. So there's some hidden gems there in the AR world. Now, the M14, and I do mean the military M14. I have some experience with those, with actual M14s. I also have owned the Springfield M1A. I quickly sold it. They're not horrible rifles, the Springfield M1A. I do believe the M1A has a cast receiver. In contrast, the M14's forged receiver. If you're familiar with the M14-ish, if you like that platform, and I do. Again, I have experience with actual M14s. They're phenomenal. They are a good, if not very heavy, rifleman's rifle. If you like to shoot and shoot long range with iron sights and really good iron sights, and you want a common, affordable round in 308, they're a good option. But you probably know about the military M14, which you really can't generally get unless you're in the military or something. There also is the M1A, which is a cast receiver, which I'm not going to get into the metallurgy behind all that, but they're the Springfield version of an M14. They're pretty well known. There's also, for a short time, made the Polytech. And I saw one of these in a little gun store in a fairly, medium-sized city in northern Idaho. And this was a while ago. It was pre-COVID, but it wasn't like, the 1900s. It wasn't the last century. And it was, I think, $700. And I walked out of there, and I've thought about that rifle many times since then. It was a Polytech for $700. I should have bought it. So, kind of a hidden gem in that M14-ish battle rifle kind of world. If you see a Polytech, I've never heard anything bad about them. I've never owned one, to be fair, and they're pretty rare, so I haven't run one. But I think they're definitely a hidden gem in that world. Also, if you're looking for something a little bit different and neither of those options kind of tickle your fancy, Beretta. And you might think, what does Beretta have to do with an M14? Well, they make kind of a quasi version of that. If you like the M1 Grand and you like the M14 and you want a detachable box magazine 308, there's a lesser known Beretta BM59. You can find these imported. They're a good design. Very similar in that they're a full-powered battle rifle, fighting rifle, in that traditional walnut and steel. Good sights, detachable box magazine in 7.62 by 51 NATO. And this is a hidden gem episode, so the BM59. I think it definitely fits that description. Like, of all the Cold War battle rifles, you probably know the M14, you probably know the FAL, you probably know even the G3, things like that. But the Beretta BM59, where's the love? A really cool option. How about another hidden gem, since it just popped into my mind? You're probably familiar, this is not a hidden gem, the SMLE, the Lee Enfield. The British battle rifles. They are legendary. They're smooth. There's a lot to love about those rifles. What's less to love is that old, I'm going to say, obsolescent, antiquated 303 British cartridge. It's a fine cartridge. It's definitely battle proven for sure over vast chunks of the whole globe. It's certainly taken many an animal. When the British Empire, when it was said that the sun never set on the British Empire. It's been all over the world. It's a fine cartridge, but not exactly modern. It's highly tapered. It's got that protruding rim. And if you're an avid shooter, it's not the easiest, most affordable round to come by. Which brings me to this hidden gem. The Ishapore. The Ishapore is an Enfield made in 308. Yes, it exists. Kind of a unicorn, but they're out there. And they're not that expensive. They're not crazy expensive. I don't like talking about prices with inflation the way that it is. Maybe you'll listen to this next year and these prices will have gone up 50% or whatever. I don't see the future. I don't know. But the Ishapurs, I think because they were made either for India or by India, associated with India, a lot of people don't really covet them like a fine German sporting arm or a Belgian sporting arm. But I've never heard anything bad about the Ishapur. If you want a Springfield, if you want like a bolt action battle rifle in 308, and the Enfields are known for a really fast among bolt action. It's got that it's got that cock on close feature, which makes it really fast. They're smooth actions. Again, there are a few things more battle proven than the SMLE. And as I aforementioned, the 308 is one of the best, probably the best crossover defensive, hunting, battle rifle cartridges, right? It encompasses all that. And it's not the best at any of the one things, but it's really good at all of them. And you can get that SMLE kind of proven design and that great, versatile, affordable, common round in the 308, that Ishapur. A hidden gem, for sure. There was a time when they were more affordable, less money, but that could really be said about anything, from gasoline to the SKS to a brick of 22 ammo. But I don't think they're as highly coveted. Again, mostly because of that India connotation. But I've never heard anything bad about the rifle. So if those features appeal to you, a big, full-size, good sights, good operating system, robust bolt action battlefield rifle in 308, you might look at that Ishapur. I think a hidden gem for sure. Now, I got one more for you, and it's a really good one. If you wanted a good all-around one rifle, you weren't planning on the end of the world being like Red Dawn, you weren't planning on peeing in any radiators, you weren't planning on engaging NATO or the Russians or the Chinese, whomever, on the Great Plains of Nebraska and Kansas to defend the nation. That wasn't what you were picturing for the end of the world. You wanted a good all-around rifle, mostly really good at its sporting purpose, at its hunting purpose, but was also semi-automatic and could lay down some firepower for a short duration to get you out of a sticky situation. Not sustained fire, right? You're not doing 30-round mag dumps. You're not doing speed reloads. But you want semi-automatic firepower. And you want a sleek, handy, good sporting carbine. Again, with those backup iron sights that I really like. And really good backup iron sights. That points well, that handles well. There is an option. A hidden gem. The Remington 74, 740, 7400. I think they went in that delineation, like the early ones were the 74, and then the 740, and then the 7400. You might be familiar with the 7600 or the 760. Those are the pump action, which are also really good, which would fit this role, especially if you live somewhere where you can't hunt with a semi-auto. But the semi-auto versions, and these were all that I'm aware of made pre the new Remington. So they should be fine for quality control, especially I think the 740s. They're in common calibers. Again, that 308 if you want a good all-around round. 30-06 if you want to go with a classic. Even more classic than the 308 they make them in all kinds of different calibers. They're good. They're handy. They're semi-automatic. They have really good iron sights. They have really good scope mounting systems for them. They were designed for a sporting rifle. And long before, again, this long-range craze hit, kind of a light, handy, fast handling, fast follow-up shot carbine. If you're looking for a good all-around ranch rifle, a good all-around carbine, for a truck gun, for kind of backcountry survival. You wanted, just in case something bad happened, you wanted just a little bit of semi-automatic capability. Again, you're not doing 30-round mag dumps and doing speed reloads, but if you need to unload a couple of rounds quickly, multiple adversaries, whatever the case is, they're semi-automatic. And I really like the way they handle. I really like the older Remington 870s. Perhaps one day, I wish that I had an older Remington Wingmaster or Police Magnum. I really do. I have a lot of professional experience with the 870. When they came out with the new 870, I bought one and the thing didn't work. I did a lot to fix it up and make it work, and then I got rid of it. I wouldn't feel good about selling a gun to somebody that I knew had issues, so I fixed it and then I got rid of it. It wasn't the old Remington that I remember. I would love to have an older Remington Wingmaster or a Police Magnum or even a Marine Magnum. One of the reasons is, talking about that fit and finish, to me, they just fit and function and fire so well. I think from my pure engineering design standpoint, the Mossberg 500, 590, I think it's the 835. There's a lot in the engineering world that the Mossberg has going for it. It has dual extractors. They're robust, they're rugged, but just for me, when I've shot them side by side, I like the fit and the pointing of an 870, and it's kind of important for a shotgun, right? Talking about the mass-produced stocks, well, that is one mass-produced thing, that Remington 870, that seems to fit me really well. And I've seen in my own experience that, like, their rifles that are built very much that same way with those kind of same aesthetics, the 760 and what we're talking about now, the 740, have a lot of that old Remington fit and finish and feel. And I like that. They're good rifles. And I think that, again, 74, 740, 7400, I think they're a hidden gem. So if you're looking for a good semi-auto, all-around, modern cartridge, semi-automatic rifle, but you don't want to go full-blown AR-15 or even a Mini 14, you don't want to lug around a 12-pound M1A with a bunch of stuff on it, you might look at that. They're good, I think, hidden gems in that semi-automatic rifle world. And in the hunting rifle world, they're a good crossover. The only issues with them I'm familiar with is by people that took them apart and put them back together improperly, which I don't know that I would fault the gun for that. But a really cool gun nonetheless. Episodes are already running kind of long. I had some other thoughts, but most of those were kind of in the pistol caliber carbine kind of world. But we're already running up on 33 minutes. I haven't even done the tactical tip and stuff for the day, so I might save that for a different episode. Maybe not. I've been doing a few of these hidden gems. Hopefully you enjoy this content. If you're thinking about buying any of these rifles or even a box of ammo, you're going to be supporting somebody. Hopefully you'll consider supporting this podcast, and to be frank, supporting me. The reason you get so much content, and you may only interact with what you hear on the podcast, but there's a lot more. Talk to anybody that's in like the audio visual kind of world, which I am not a tech guy, right? I'm not super tech savvy. There's a lot more that goes into it, trust me, than just the minutes that I'm talking. There's a lot of other stuff that goes on behind the scenes. Anyway, if you want to support this ministry, and I'm going to be honest, me, if you want to support me in doing this, right, it is written, you shall not muzzle the ox while it treads out the grain. If you're considering buying a new rifle or shotgun or pistol or a box of ammo for a fraction of that cost, you can support on Patreon. I'll put a Patreon link in the show notes. If you want to support, please consider becoming a patron. You get some cool insider content, and you get to interact with me on more than just a listening basis, right? It becomes more of a two-way thing there where we can communicate pretty easily. Ask me questions, ask me advice. If you've listened to a couple of episodes, you likely don't agree with everything I say, right? You shouldn't. I'm not infallible. But you likely agree with a lot of the viewpoints here. So if you want my opinion on stuff, you want to be able to ask me stuff. If you think that's valuable, consider becoming a patron. Again, a Patreon link in the show notes. Also, other ways to support. You can go to goodshepherdtraining.com, goodshepherdtraining.com. There's some merchandise on there. I don't make a lot on that stuff, I'll be honest. But if you just want to buy a sticker, right, a Gunfighter Life sticker to put on your water bottle, on your laptop, or whatever, goodshepherdtraining.com. But really consider becoming a patron if you want to support me, if you care about that. Enough about that. As a thanks for listening, and I am thankful and humbled that you listen, the tactical tip of the day. I've recently talked about it, but it came up talking about patrons. A patron asked me a question, and it was pretty popular, so I'm going to talk about it here for all of your benefits. Talking about an AR-15 setup. Here's the deal. What are the mission parameters, right? What do you want it to do? For a lot of people, if you just want it for a home defense gun, especially if you live in an urban, suburban area, there's nothing wrong with just a red dot. I prefer an LPVO. That's even, and I'm not saying this to be like, oh, I was cool before it was cool, but I literally ran an LPVO in law enforcement before I ever saw anybody else run an LPVO. We're talking way back pre-COVID. We're talking way back before Obama. We're talking way back before the last ammo shortage. Not this one, the one before that. We're talking the aughts, I believe. I started shooting a lot of competition as a law enforcement officer. This was after my time in the military. And I saw the advantages of an LPVO, and I started running them in my more specialized assignments in law enforcement. Even back then, but like again, when I was like an outlier, when I never remember seeing them on a duty gun. They were for the gamer gun, right? Back then, that's how they were seen, which is a lot of the way that military and law enforcement see stuff. A lot of times, they're 20 years behind the curve, right? They're 20 years behind. Competition guys were running red dots on handgun decades ago. Competition guys were running LPVOs a long time ago. Competition guys were shooting in an isosceles back when a lot of people were still teaching the Weaver stance, right? It just is. Military and law enforcement tend to be slow to the party. It just is, right? How long were STI, now Staccato 2011s popular in competition shooting? Now you're seeing them starting to be popular in law enforcement. Again, behind the curve. Okay. The LPVO is one of those things, right? It is a great choice. Phenomenal. It's my go-to. And I'm saying that as somebody that came to that decision, not because it was the next cool thing, not because the military just finally a couple of years ago adopted an LPVO and people think it's like the new hot thing to put on a fighting carbine. There's a lot of good reason for an LPVO. You do give up a little bit. You don't have, in general, as generous an eye box. If you like switching sides, if you like shooting around barricades, right side, right shoulder, left side, left shoulder, you can shoot with either side of your body. You can be pretty ambidextrous moving and shooting like that. You do give up a little bit of eye box as opposed to a red dot. The red dot can be a little bit faster and more forgiving, and especially in more unconventional positions, like let's say urban prone, laying on your side, shooting underneath a vehicle. Things like that, yeah, red dot has its advantage. But I think overall, I like an LPVO. If you're asking me, if you're just saying I want an AR-15 or an AR-10, not a specialized home defense carbine, not a dedicated CQB thing, correct? Because that's be different. I have a more dedicated CQB. It's not strictly CQB. When I was the commander of a tactical team, that was often one of the guns that I would take. Not always, but I have a very short AR setup with a red dot. But if you're asking for like one good setup for a go-to for most situations, AR-15, AR-10, modern fighting carbine, I like an LPVO. I like an LPVO with 45-degree offset iron sights. You can't really co-witness with an LPVO the way you can with a red dot. So if I'm running an LPVO, I like the 45-degree offset iron sights. Good, usable iron sights, not like vestigial iron sights. And if I am doing really close-in stuff, a lot of times I prefer just the irons. We're talking, right, small room kind of stuff. I like that setup, if you're asking me for a setup. If you say you want the red dot, then I prefer a true co-witness on my red dot sight. And I know a lot of people like the lower 1/3, and I'm not ragging on that. I like the true co-witness, especially for the reason that if I have the sights up, then I can quickly see if something's out of whack. If my red dot gets knocked off, I can look and see. You should always confirm it, but I can pretty much get the red dot back zeroed by getting a good sight picture with a good peep sight and zeroing it back, because I like my red dot zeroed right on the very top center of my front sight post, right? If your iron sights are zeroed for the same distance and the same ammo that your red dot is zeroed, they should all be in line with a true co-witness. And if something's off, I should be able to tell. Maybe that's my iron sights, maybe that's my red dot, but it'll let me know something is wrong. And if I have to re-zero and my iron sights are still zeroed, it makes it a lot easier and it saves a lot of money on ammo if I can just put that red dot on the top and center of that front sight post with a good sight picture. That's how I like to set up either one of those. But that's your tactical tip of the day on setting up a fighting carbine, fighting rifle. Your tactical verse of the day is from Acts 16. Sirs, what must I do to be saved? So they said, believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, and you will be saved, you and your household. Comments. Do you need a savior? There's only one right answer to that question. Yes, you do need a savior. There is only one. All other religions are false garbage. I'm not one for pulling punches or mincing words here. Jesus is the only way. He says, no one comes to the Father except through me. I am the way. Not a way, the truth, and the life. Do you need a savior? Yes. Anything else is a wrong answer. How many saviors are there? Only one. Anything else is a wrong answer. You need Jesus. Whether you acknowledge it or not, whether you admit it or not, you need Jesus. You need a savior. You either have him or you need to have him. Those are your two categories. You're going to either live by him and through him, or you're going to die and perish without him. That's it. You think about that. Contemplate that. Those are the important things in life. Less so than what optic you put on your fighting rifle, or what the configuration is, or does the M14 M1A make sense for me in my life and my preparedness journey right now, right? How about the important parts of the journey? Sirs, what must I do to be saved? So he said, believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, and you will be saved, you and your household. And if you're not familiar with that story in Acts, shortly after that, he and his household did and were baptized. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.